rand. Weekend past the 18 rand against the US dollar mark for the first time since early November, casting a shadow on the outlook for inflation and interest rates trajectory. Well, let's get some analysis now on the local index and how it's faring in early trade. And we speak to Greg Katzen-ellen-bogen. He is a director at Sanlam Private Wealth. Greg, good morning and good to talk to you. Let's start with the quick overview of how the JSE is faring in early trade, particularly the rand, which traded on the strong side of 18 rand against the dollar yesterday.
Yes, so good morning. The markets are pretty flat at the moment. At 10 a.m. Is when the London market opens, so we'll get more direction from there. But I don't expect anything to happen. I expect the markets to trade flat until 3:30 this afternoon when the US inflation data comes out. That's probably the most keenly anticipated US data, which will determine whether the Federal Reserve will take their foot off the accelerator in terms of interest rates or ease up. But in terms of the rand, yes, it did go past 18. That's a consequence really primarily because of the US dollar, the dollar index strengthening, because worries that the Fed are not done raising interest rates yet, and it might go past 5% at some stage. So the market's a little bit spooked about today's inflation data, and that's why, obviously, South Africa also has some specific issues, load shedding and lack of economic growth, so that would have exacerbated the move, but primarily because of what the US dollar is doing. But the rand below 18 at the moment, so hopefully that was just a brief flip over that level.
Yeah. Let's talk about Stats SA. They are due to release the Consumer Price Index for January 2023. What can we expect from that data?
Well, that's also quite eagerly anticipated. If you think that, from October, we've had 2 months of declining headline inflation, which was positive. However, you must look at that in terms of, if you exclude food and non-alcoholic beverages and fuel, then the inflation on those levels were much higher, and that's a big problem. So the problem was maize. For 2022, the maize price rose about 30%, cereals and that about 23%. So hopefully the fuel will give us some respite, but it will all be dependent on food inflation. So hopefully the trend is still there, but I think food inflation is something to watch and might keep a lid. Might prevent that inflation falling further. But if it does, that will be good news for the Reserve Bank in order to get close to probably going on hold in terms of interest rate hikes.
Yeah. Let's talk company news. Spirit, and I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly. This is a Western Cape-based property company which has sold the Liberty Life office building in Century City for a cool 400 million rand. What do we know about this transaction?
Well, not too much. They bought this building for 375 million in 2019. So over those couple of years, they're making about a gross profit of 25 million. Yeah. Of that 25, 1 million will go for the costs of selling the building, and then they will have 24 million to invest in their funds. So, they've been focusing solely on the Western Cape. They seem to have it was a decent yield on this building, so I'm not quite sure why they sold the building, but they've sold it to Capitec. And I think it gets something like 200 rand a square meter, but the rationale for selling it for really just a 25 million gain over 4 years, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to another property company Attack has teamed up with the Public Investment Corporation to fund a 2.8 billion rand waterfall city development pipeline in a deal that has the government employees pension fund a substantial stake. Talk us through the specs of this deal.
Yeah, well, I think that's very good news for the shareholders. So I think the government employees pension fund has got a good deal. I think Attack valued that whole waterfall development at the end of 2022 at something like 11 billion rand, and so the employees pension fund, government employees pension fund, is putting in 2.8 billion, of which 2.5 billion is for a 30% stake in the business. So they got it at a discount to what the directors valued the development at. So I think it's a very good deal for them, and there's a shareholders loan of 300 million. But this is, as you know, part of the development includes the Mall of Afrika, which is the largest mall on the continent. But I think it's the important thing is that the type of tenants that have been attracted, you've got PwC, you've got Deloitte, and then also Amazon Web Services have now moved out there. So I think it's a very good deal for the government employees pension fund.
Interesting indeed. Thank you very much for that markets update.